Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. And welcome to our joint webinar hosted by the One UN Talent Group entitled UN Careers in Motion, Women Making a Difference. My name is Jacqueline Malapitan. I'm a Human Resources Officer at UNIDO, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. I'm joined by my co-moderator, Mr. Jorge Alsina, HR Officer from the World Food Program, and we're both thrilled to guide you through this inspiring conversation. Today's webinar brings together 5 remarkable women from across the UN system, from UNESCO, UNIDO, UN Women, the UN Secretariat, and UNDP, each with a unique story and career path. The theme of our discussion is Women Making a Difference in the United Nations System, and we'll explore how these professionals have navigated their journeys, overcame challenges, and contributed meaningfully to global development and peace.
So the format of today's session is divided in 2 main parts. First, each panelist will briefly introduce themselves and share their personal journey to and within the UN. In the second part, we'll ask each speaker some questions to dive deeper into their experience and insights. Then lastly, if time allows, we'll open the floor for additional questions from the audience to our speakers. You can submit your questions in the comments at any time, and we'll be keeping an eye on that area. We hope this session will inspire and inform those considering or pursuing already a career in the UN, especially women making a difference. So let's begin by hearing from our first speaker.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here. Thank you very much for joining us today. I am Rita Aguiar. I'm talking to you from Santo Tomé and Príncipe. It's a very small island country in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I work here as a program analyst for UNDP, which in fact means I lead the program in inclusive economic growth. So I have 2 minutes to introduce myself. And I will start with the beginning. Since very young, I've been a volunteer. I've been working closely with the people living on the margins of society. So then I decided to study economics because I wanted to understand how the world works, how people organize themselves in a society. I remember I was in doubt whether I studied sociology or anthropology, but then I wanted to get to practical terms in how our society is organized. So after having finished my bachelor and master degree in economics, I had my first job as in an European affairs consultancy. I worked there for 3 years, and then I was kind of disappointed with the amount of time that your job takes you. I could not dedicate so much time to volunteering, so I realized I have to bring those 2 ambitions together in my job, in what I do daily. So that's when I packed my bags and I went to Guinea-Bissau. I worked there as a kind of a local CFO of an NGO. Then I became country representative of another NGO working with entrepreneurs and economic inclusion. And there I had the opportunity to move to Santo Tomé and Príncipe, where I've been now for 3 years. And we're doing this role that I perform right now. Meanwhile, I had 2 kids. I'm on the way to the 3rd kid, so I also build my family, and I'm happy to say that I enjoy both parts of my life, my family life, and I so much enjoy what I do as a job. So thank you very much. This is a brief introduction of myself, and I hand over to our next panelist that I look forward to hear.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure joining you all in this conversation. I'm Anna Parini. I'm originally from Italy and currently working with the UN Women in the humanitarian team in Geneva. And thanks, Rita, and congratulations for your family and the 3rd child on the way. My studies were very different from what I'm doing now. I study philosophy. I was ready to continue my research and across some European university where I started to work. And then I had a bit of an epiphany, thanks to some volunteering experience in Eastern Europe. And I decided to go back to study and doing a European master in management of the development and management of programming. That led me to have a fellowship to do some work, research, and I decided to go to Eritrea to do a research on at that time, and we're talking about many years ago, on the reform of the education system. And then while there, I started to connect with people, and I started a bit by chance to work with my government as a development officer in the Italian Cooperation office there. And then I moved to other countries, from Eritrea to Djibouti to Morocco. And I joined first the UN and UNICEF in Liberia in a time of post-war election. From there, then first as a consultant, and then as a temporary assignment, I move around in different countries and with different agencies, from UNDP and in New York. And then I moved with UN Women 10 years ago in Fiji. A very small remote island, so a bit of a change in scenery throughout my career. From Fiji, then I move always with UN Women in Ethiopia, so a large number of people living in Ethiopia, in a landlocked country from a Pacific Ocean island. And at that point, I was with all my family, with 2 kids already growing up. And 3 years ago, I moved to Geneva. So now my kids are now adolescents. They pose a bit of a challenge as well, together with the humanitarian work and amazing colleagues that I'm supporting throughout the globe. So this is me, and I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to hear your question. Pass the floor to Adina.
Thank you so much, Anna, and it's really nice to be here. And hello to everybody who's tuning in. So my name is Adina Trunk, and I am the Chief of the Executive Office for the Communication and Information sector at UNESCO, which, just as a little parenthesis, doesn't mean that we work on communication-related matters, but actually on issues that have to do with freedom of expression, safety of journalists, media development, digital transformation, and so on. I'm really excited to be here, I must say, because compared to our other panelists, my journey within the UN has just started. And by just, I mean maybe 1.5 years ago. Because actually, so I'm a political scientist by training, and I specialize in European studies. And the reason for it is because I always felt that, originally coming from Romania and having experienced maybe the dictatorship's close hand, I really wanted to get involved and work with democracy and human rights issues. And that's what I've done my entire professional life. And so I always felt the need to work for a cause and a purpose that is close to my heart. And so after my studies, so as I mentioned, I studied European studies, I always thought that I would end up working for the European Union and maybe in Brussels. So, and also because I love languages and I lived all over Europe, more or less. But then my first jobs were actually in Sweden, where I was based before moving here to UNESCO for 30 odd years. So I'm a Swedish national. And there, one thing led to the other. I worked for a women's organization linked to the parliament with political parties. And then increasingly, I got involved in working on democracy issues. And that also led me then to my first job in an intergovernmental organization, which was International IDEA, which is an intergovernmental organization essentially just working on democracy and elections and human rights. And I mean, my entire professional journey has really been driven by this desire to make a difference and to maybe give back to some of the people that, I could have been one of them, but I was lucky enough to then grow up and to live in a country that was a full-fledged democracy. So this was a bit my driving force. But throughout all of this, I also built a family. I have 2 children that are now also at the beginning of their teenage years. And it was with them that I moved to UNESCO last year, where so this was a big change for us as a family, and also for them, of course. But I must say, listening to all these stories, I really feel that you can have it all. You can have a rewarding career and a family life, but it takes a lot of work. And my God, have I worked to get here. Very happy to be here, as I said, and now I can see that it's time for Rana to join.
Great, Adina. It's been such a pleasure listening to all of you, and there's so much that we all share, I feel. So I'm Rana Ghonaim. I'm the director of the Division for Energy and Climate Action at UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And what brings me here is already, like actually some of the colleagues who spoke, I came across the UN at a very early age. So I'm originally Palestinian. I grew up in Lebanon, and I'm Egyptian by nationality. So, UN it was really very present for me growing up, and I've always aspired to work for the UN. I had a passion for environment, and I always loved being in nature. Hanging out with my friends in nature was always something I did. And so also growing up, I really liked scientific topics. So biology, chemistry, physics were some of my favorite subjects. So when I came to study, at that time, probably you're talking about 27, 28 years ago, environmental science and environmental development was something that in our part of the world was almost like AI now. So really, there was not really a very big job market, and everyone told me, why are you studying that? But I really had an aspiration and a thought that this is where I can make a difference, bringing the knowledge that I gained from my university and studies and bringing it into global action through the UN. So I started working for UNIDO in Lebanon. So right after university, I started working on surveying industries. So simply visiting industries to create surveys and that analyze their environmental footprints. And a year later, I was also very lucky to join then headquarters. It's been 25 years now that I'm here. Amazing how time flies. And I would have to say that the motivation continues, and because going back every time and seeing the impact that we have through our programs on the ground has been a very big source of motivation. So in my career, I always strived for doing better for the communities we work in, doing better for the countries that we work in, and I feel that I've always stepped up. And this is where I was also able to create this career. So being now also coming to quite a senior level within the organization at the director level. So really, I think hard work and commitment and being aspired by these duties that we have is something that certainly pays off. I also do have 2 kids, and my son is turning 22 over the weekend. So this is a very exciting milestone. I also feel that was a nice combination because although when I was 25 and I had him, it was, I was jumping on the bed with him, enjoying all the time. But now basically, being a senior also representative, there's also more of the balance because, of course, I also help aspire my kids into how they can make an impact as well in the society. So I'll stop here and I'll turn it over to Hiroko.
Thank you very much, Rana. My name is Hiroko Hirahara. I'm a director of civil affairs in UNMISS. It's a United Nations mission in South Sudan. I'm representing the Secretariat docket of this forum. And you're probably wondering why you say Secretariat and I'm in the peacekeeping mission. Actually, peacekeeping mission is part of the Secretariat. I have a little bit of different career than everybody else because most of my Korea was in a so-called sort of a dangerous zone, post in conflict area, because naturally I'm in the peacekeeping. So it's either you are there to keep the peace, or that you are sometimes have to enhance or enforce the peace in the country. I started thinking about working for UN long time ago when I was very young in junior high school in Japan. I'm coming from Japan. But, I mean, just like ordinary Japanese, and at that time that nobody really thought about working outside the country. And, you're always so worried about your school and then passing the test and going to the university, good university, and what kind of company that they're going to be working with. But I read this one book about some woman executive in that time it was ILO, Japanese person. And then I was very much inspired by how she was really advancing a career in as a Japanese woman in the United Nations. And I'm like, I started just thinking about, okay, maybe this is something that which is something that is like a goal, like you wanted to actually to move towards. So when I decided to go about your education sort of direction, I thought about going to high school abroad as an exchange student. Then later on, I decided to go to university in US. Just like Rana, I also studied the environmental area, because as she said, it was at that time, it was a quite new thing. I thought I was very much interested and interesting career and then areas of study. And after I graduated, I actually I learned that I had to get a master's degree to actually work in United Nations, because some of those criteria is that when you look at the vacancy announcement, that it's always say the master's degree. So I said, how do I do that? Because I spent all those money for the 4 years university work in US. Then I said, okay, I think and there's a way to do it is to continue working in Japan, but that I can actually work in and attend the university. That's how I got the master's degree. But that time that I was already gearing toward that I wanted to get into the career of the United Nations. And then finally I got into the United Nations as a JPO, UNEP, because remember that I had a study of the environmental study, so that I actually pushed for that. And then I was working for the United Nations Environment Program. They administered one environmental convention called Basel Convention, and also after that I worked for UNICEF WASH program. Now, how I ended up as working in the peacekeeping missions, I think you notice that nowadays most of the conflict is resource-based. Resource-based means that you're looking into the environment, natural resources. So it looks a bit far from the environmental studies, far from the conflict resolution, but in reality, there's a lot of similarity. So when I got a job after I working for the UNICEF and WASH program in the peacekeeping mission, the first one was in Liberia as an environment and natural resources advisor to the mission, where I met Anna. And then also after that, I worked in Darfur. This is a hybrid peacekeeping mission together with the African Union. And then I worked briefly in Cyprus, and now I am in South Sudan. I did 2 head of field office job in the 2 different locations, and now I'm a director of Civil Affairs Division. And Civil Affairs Division is the place that we deal with peace building and then conflict resolution and conflict prevention in the country, which is really a very important subject in a place like South Sudan. I'm very much looking forward to have interactive discussion with you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Hiroko. So we're now moving to the second part of our session. where we're going to ask each speaker some questions to dive deeper into their experiences and insights. So let's start with Anna. Anna, we have a question for you. Can you share your experience working in the humanitarian field, how women have contributed or impacted, especially in times of crisis?
Thanks, Jorge. This is a big question, and I'm the one breaking the ice today. So, and it's a very appropriate question. Working currently for the past 10 years for UN Women, who is that is the organization mandated for gender equality, women empowerment. Being a woman and having working in different area really got me even more passionate about what I'm doing and exposed to different way to contribute. So I think that working in the humanitarian field, and Hiroko-san mentioned, is one of the most challenging and rewarding at the same time kind of job. It means be present with people when people are facing some of the most difficult challenge of their life, either due to conflict, displacement, or natural disaster and causes. And it means to try and make sure that the collective responses that we all contributed towards not only saves life, but respect the dignity and build the resilience and acknowledge the differences between men and boys, women and girls. As a humanitarian specialist in the different countries where I work, I really saw the difference then a woman working with the United Nations, with civil society organization, women in the community, and women affected by disaster can make the difference, and how differently impacted they are by either humanitarian or developmental problem. I don't want to sound like preaching, but we need to acknowledge the fact that women and girls are starting from a more disadvantaged point, and very often in the time of disaster, conflict, or displacement are even further left behind. I want to touch upon a couple of experiences. One main one that really changed a bit my view was working with in Fiji, a small island, very small population, enjoyable kind of work, very close to the community, the way in which I feel it can make a difference and serving people that we meet and I met every day. There was one of the hardest and most violent cyclone during my time there that destroyed a lot of infrastructure, livelihoods, sources, and taking life as well. And in that small environment, the response and my colleague contribution, and the women in the community was impressively astonished. The sense of solidarity that quickly builds up in a need to respond, in the need to reach the most vulnerable people, really is a strong fil rouge that connects us all. It was me, UN Women, my female colleague that had been impacted in their own family, in their own community, and women's working around Fiji and around the area that was most affected. I think that the recognition of all of us in looking at the more comprehensive perspective of the different needs that the woman have in that moment in time is not only save the life or save the house, but it means protecting women, make them feel heard, listen to their point of view, and listen to the point of view not only because we need to listen to both men and women, but very often the perspective that women has in their own community is much longer term. It builds resilience and is more sustainable. And me as a connector, I learn as much as in every other country. I making the connection and sharing the classes has been much more rewarding listening to them and growing in my own career. And then move into Ethiopia, a very different setting. And during my time in Ethiopia, I spent a bit more than 4 years there. There was everything and more. Severe drought due to climate change, interacting conflict and a very harsh civil war in the north of the country. And again, seeing the women making a difference, knocking on the door, being very loud and resourceful in terms of offering solutions that others couldn't think, or in terms of highlight the aspect on their life that they've been impacted and they couldn't be ignored because they are as part as everybody else of that community. I think that I really learned many things, and I grew up in my career building up this very strong sense of solidarity, this very strong sense of serving people, great humility. I probably learned much more than I share. I was more a connector. So from the career perspective, working in this field has definitely taught me humility and resilience. Humanitarian work is about partnership. There's no single organization, agency, or person that can do that alone. It requires working close to community, be inclusive in the way of working, and especially with women whose voices are very often marginalized. So it showed me how to invest in women as a higher return in terms of staff and in terms of also people we are connected with. So to anyone considering a career in the humanitarian, well, just to know and let you know that it's demanding, often, very often unpredictable, and sometimes heartbreaking, because you're faced with the most difficult situation, horrific at times, where humanity has been forgotten. But it's also very, very deeply meaningful. So every time that we see a woman thrive, rebuild their livelihood, rebuild their family, feeling safe and protected, or seeing your colleagues moving and making a career within the organization, it's a great sense of fulfillment. So I pass it back to you, Jorge, and I'm looking forward to your question and clarification that our audience might have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for giving us some personal perspective there on those situations that you've been living through. That's extremely interesting. We'll go back to you potentially with our next block if we have time on Q&As from the audience. Now let's move to Adina. We're gonna go. We have a question for you, Adina. What was the biggest adjustment you had to make when transitioning from your previous organization, very recently, as we heard, into the UN system?
Thank you so much, Jorge. It's a very good question. It actually made me reflect quite a bit on this, because obviously the adjustment has been both on a professional and a personal level. But let me first start with the professional. I think that coming in mid-career in a leadership position in any organization isn't easy, because obviously there have been people that have been there for much longer than you have, people that know much more than you do. But you still want to contribute, and you still want the challenge, and you still want something that you can do to be part of this group. And I think for me, the biggest challenge, or not the biggest challenge, the biggest adjustment has been that I was used to, let's say, know everybody, and also to have a lot of independence, and for things to move at a certain pace. And coming into the UN, I really felt for the first time in a very long time like a small fish in a big pond. Whereas before I was maybe a fish in a little aquarium, very similar in structure, right? I mean, it was still water and fish of different sizes and different places you could navigate. But suddenly I found myself in something that resembled more of an ocean. And of course, it takes time. And there, I think that you have to be both patient with yourself, but also hopefully to have patience from the people around you that have been there for much longer and maybe have forgotten what it is to be new on the job. So I think on one hand, I was used to things moving much quicker. I was used to a different hierarchy that was essentially non-existent. And I noticed that in the UN being the UN and reuniting so many countries, of course, there is a slower pace, an inertia that has been persisting for a very long time, and that I had to get adjusted to. I had to get adjusted to the hierarchies and the processes and the time it took to move things, but also maybe a certain resistance to change anything that has worked for a long time. And again, coming from a different background, even if it is within this line of work, I'm not a patient person. I like things to move. I'm pretty efficient. I see opportunities. I want to go after them. So I think it really demands a reset for me mentally to understand that, okay, let's move things slowly, but we're still moving. And it's so important that we're moving because the impact we're creating is on a completely different scale. So I think that's really on the professional side. It's the hierarchies, it's the pace of change, it's getting adjusted to a much bigger ecosystem than I was used to. Then maybe on the personal level, just mentioning it very quickly, I think it is always an adjustment. And I mean, I was lucky enough to move within Europe, but I can only imagine what it's like when you move across continents and to very different contexts. I think that should also be taken into account, that there needs to be a lot of discussions and deliberations and really a thought-through process that is also allowed to take time, because everything is new. From schools to doctors to everything that is around you in your life. We're not just working machines, we're human beings, and often women take a lot of the responsibility for the social life, the family life, the parents if they're not in the same country. So we need to take this into account when we do those moves, that really we need to allocate some time for these as well. And maybe I would say lastly, I think one of the biggest adjustment was to see how wonderful colleagues can collaborate from all over the world despite ongoing conflicts and wars, and everybody's working for a cause. And that's really why I wanted to join the UN and do this job, because in the end it's the substance that matters. It's the reason why we're here, why we're getting up and getting to work every day, and seeing people from all over the world disregarding political context and maybe all sorts of differences, and reuniting around a cause. That I find it so powerful, and it's really the driving force that makes me get up every morning, at least. So yeah, I'm also very glad to hear if you have any further comments or questions, and also to get to know the audience a little bit. I mean, I'm speaking to a blue screen. I don't know who you are, but anyway, it's very good to hear from you later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adina. So I think this is going to be inspiring for many, because I believe there is some misconception about having a career in the UN system where you just need to join the UN early on in your career, which can definitely be the case. But you're a living example of someone having a successful career outside of the UN system and then joining in a leadership position. And obviously there is some adaptation period, and there's all the specific mechanics of the UN system and the dynamics that may be different, but it can be done. You've been successfully doing it for a few months now, and then as well the personal side, that perspective of the importance of considering as well allocating some time and effort for the family and your personal environment as well to adapt to your new role in the UN. So, well, we may follow up on this with questions from the audience later on. Let's move now with Rita. Rita, we have another question for you. And it is, what advice would you give to female professionals who are at an early stage of their professional journey to build up their experience and expertise towards a career in the UN system?
Advice, I'm 34 years old, so I don't see myself in a position as giving advice to others, but I do have this experience. So 8 years as a development practitioner, which is what I am to the core. So I'm not a humanitarian. I'm not in a humanitarian sector. I'm not a diplomat. So I'm a development practitioner, and that comes with a set of skills and the way I am and how that translates into skills. So my advice, my very first advice would be to know yourself and what drives you. I met so many different people in this organization. The people I see will be the diplomats and the leaders of, for instance, my country office. So they know about politics and about how connecting with the other people and I don't know, the prime minister of the country, the president. There's like more science people or more geeks, and this is a global organization, so you need data, and it's all about the data. So you really need those people to have them on board. So and then it's really different personalities and really different motivations, right? There's people with the family, my situation, and people without family and more into their works and into their what they're doing like in their job, which is okay, and it's very interesting that we can combine all that in one organization. So I would say be mindful of who you are and what drives you. And that may sound like a cliche, but in fact, in an international career, in international organizations such as in the UN system, you for sure you'll be faced with a lot of difficult decisions. Whether you move to a country where, for instance, there's no healthcare for your kids, so that's a hard decision, and if at the same time you want a family, this is my situation. So it's a difficult decision. So you really have to know what drives you, and if you really want to be there, you have to decide whether you go to a country that is in conflict, and that's also a difficult decision whether you stay close to your parents or not. So that's those difficult decisions will appear, and sometimes you can even get a bit lonely because you're moving around. So you might also decide to stay, which is always an option. So I this is my advice, like to know yourself. And so the steps to I would recommend for anyone who is applying and who is thinking about building their career in the UN system. I'm not giving like specific tips on how to do your CV or something like this, but really to be now who you want to be in the future. So I remember when I was studying, and I was using a lot of my time, maybe 50% of my time to volunteer. Um, and my colleagues, sometimes they had better grades than I did. I must admit, sometimes I was not the best student, but I was already doing what I believed I was supposed to be doing. And then somehow that drove me to be where I am now and being this development practitioner. I don't think I would have the skills that I have, like the social skills, the soft skills, if I hadn't had so much focus also on building those. So if you're a person that likes to study, and if you want to be that person, just start to be that person now. It's not something you will do in the future, that you will become another person in the future. So just do it, and then that will lead you to where you want to be. So I think that would be my advice, as much as I can give. So back to you, Jorge.
Thank you, Rita. Can I ask you a bit of a follow up on that part where you were mentioning that you will face difficult career decisions when it comes to go to certain places or not, and so on. And these are decisions that impact obviously you as a professional, but as well as a person, and on the personal life. Your life will significantly change depending on where you go. But as well, if you have a family, that will have an impact in your family. So is there a way so far in those decisions you have taken so far, an approach that you have taken to consider those opportunities and where you decide whether to go or not?
Mm-hmm. So for me, family-wise, so I didn't think I was this person who would have 3 kids. I didn't see myself as that person initially, so that I didn't actually plan for it. And then when I realized that I was that person, I was kind of seeing myself as also that person. And then I had to take the decision of whether I want to drop one of my dreams or not. And so I think even was Adine that also shared that it is possible to have it all, but you really have to have a focus and to know and to balance out the decisions, like what's the risk that I'm taking here. For instance, in my case, so I was pregnant in a country without health care. So it's I needed to travel a lot. I needed to check on my health and the baby. I need to travel for the birth of my 2 kids, and so that was that there was a lot of organization, there was a lot of logistics into my family, and how I could manage that with doing what I love to be doing. So that's the balance is definitely not easy. There were some other things that I had to put on hold. So for things that are, I don't know, I don't party hard so much as I used to, you know, and I like it. I don't know. It's a simple thing, but it's sometimes you have to look at who you are, what you value the most, and then just go for it, and it's possible. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Rita. Now we're moving on to our next question for our next panel member, Hiroko-san. We have a question for you. And this is, well, peace operations present a very unique professional and personal environment compared to headquarters or other settings. So from your experience, what are some of the specific challenges and opportunities for women leaders serving in peacekeeping missions? And how have you personally navigated them?
Thank you very much. I hope, yeah, you can hear me. Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, that a few minutes ago, I saw the chat box saying about 400 people joined, maybe more now. So I'm very happy that you know, we are actually I can only see you, but we have so many audience. You know, I think many people think that the peacekeeping operation is only for the military and police. And yes, it's true that there is a lot of opportunity for the military and police women, you know, because nowadays troop contributing countries and police contributing countries encouraged to have their own female officers join in the peacekeeping. But in reality, that the many of those missions are headed by civilians. And for example, we have like large missions in African continent, MONUSCO, which is in Congo, and MINUSCA in the Central African Republic, and us as UNMISS, the United Nations mission in South Sudan. And those are quite large peacekeeping mission, multidimensional, very much integrated, so that we are not, it's not like only one component, like a military does everything and then civilian section supports, not like this. All those missions are designed to have each component does equally, so that we can tackle the protection of civilians in a different tiers, like one pursue the protection of civilian in dialogue. Another one is a physical protection. This is have a lot to do with the military and police, and then also that how we create a conducive environment for the protection, because we are peacekeeping mission. So we do go and then operate in a very difficult conditions, but we don't provide humanitarian aid. It's not like we are a humanitarian agency that we are going to those locations and then doing the distribution of humanitarian aid, but rather we do the assessment and what kind of protection needs they have. We do actually support the humanitarian agencies and funds and program to deliver their aid in a very secure environment. You know, sometimes we deploy some of those peacekeepers to provide and then secure the environment for such kind of deliveries. But even that, we don't just send the military personnel, we go together, and so that we can actually have a dialogue on the ground. I think that the environment is very difficult, but it does actually poses a lot of opportunities as well, because you know, when you are looking at the victims of the conflict, many of those who are deeply affected is a woman. And for them, naturally, that they would like to speak with a woman to go there and then talk to them and then what actually happened. And I think many people think that those women who are affected by the conflict or sometimes unfortunately become the victim of the conflict, people think that, oh, those are poor women, we need to really give them support. Of course, we do have to give them a support, but there are many of them are very, very strong. And then they wanted to come out and speak up about what they had experienced and how can they contribute to make their country better and safer, so that the other woman does not have to go through what they have been going through. And then they are eager to join in the political discussions. That's where that we come in as a peacekeepers, especially for the civilian side, like we are doing, is to provide that platform and then go to the deep field and then talk to those women and then say, now, this is a chance for you to actually talk. What would you like to, not for AMIS or peacekeeping to do, but what do you want from your own country? And then this is a kind of opportunity that we are the only one who can actually facilitate with the help of those agencies and funds and programs very much interested in those programs, because peacekeeping mission is usually a very large operation, and then we have logistics and then the resources to actually go to some of those deep field. So those are the kind of opportunity that unique opportunity we have, and I very much feel obliged, or I feel very much empowered by opportunity that I had to work in such kind of environment, because you feel like, okay, maybe they were really looking up to me as being a woman leader, so that it's not only about us providing those platform and the discussion, which is very important, but they're also thinking that, well, if Hiroko can do it, maybe we can also do. I remember one time that we have a very serious discussion in a large crowd of people, discussing about what is the peace processes, what would you like to do for your country. But the majority of the participants are men, especially the one who's participating. But then I noticed that there's a periphery of that area where we are having a meeting. I see women standing there watching. Many of them are like bystanders or observers, but they are not part of the meetings, but they're actually outside watching. Not because we excluded the women to be in the actual discussion, but naturally that when you go to talk to the authorities, that most of the leaders are men, so that they actually, we ended up as having a lot of men talking with us. My side also, nowadays it's not so, it is gender parity of the peacekeeping mission is much, much better, but still that my side, when I'm talking, that all these people I'm coming with, many of them are men. And then also that I go with some of the protection people, that they are all military and police, so they are men. So it's quite male-dominated environment. And I remember one time that while I was talking, then my turn comes. And then I had a speech that I was prepared and I was going to read it. But then I just dropped the paper and then I just look at it. I said, there's no gender parity here, that I think there's a very few women. But let me tell you something, that this is a large peacekeeping mission that we have in this country, and I'm the boss, And all the women outside there watching was clapping and then, happy and started singing. And this is the kind of things that when I remembered that, well, maybe it's not about the job I'm doing only, but that me as being a woman and being a woman leader, and then talking, in front of people itself, it becomes very interesting, or very, very encouraging figure, or encouraging the things for those people that we are serving. I think for the challenges, obviously it's very difficult situation, so work-life balance is it's very difficult to achieve. And then those are the kind of things that anybody who is very much interested in peacekeeping mission is the one that who really have to think about it, what you really wanted to do for your own personal life, including the family establishment of the family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hiroko-san. It's It's really very interesting to hear how working in such challenging conditions and environments presents some challenges, but definitely, from a woman perspective, brings some opportunities as well, and that impact that your work as a woman leading such operations in those environments, the impact that has on the other side in the communities in which you operate. That's amazing. So thank you so much. We move on to Rana, and this is a question we have for you. Afterwards, we have a couple of minutes for some questions from the audience. Let's go with your question, Rana, and then we move on to the questions from the audience. As a woman with a strong background in technical and industrial fields, what advice would you give to other women in STEM who are interested in contributing to the work of the United Nations? How can they leverage their expertise to make a meaningful impact?
Thanks, Jorge. And again, super inspired by all the leaders that spoke already. Now, specifically on this, I just want to say that there's multiple ways in which women in STEM can contribute to the work of the UN. In our area, for example, for young women, there's a lot of groups like the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. So, I mean, the SDG related to energy. And then there's also student energy. So there's multiple groups that are involved in bringing also views from young people, from women as well, into some of the work in the UN, including the review of SDGs. So being involved in the UN on a scientific field does not only mean employment, and I just wanted to bring that up as well. There's also, for example, a body that we run within UNIDO that advises the Secretary General on technology issues for energy technologies, the Council of Engineers for the Energy Transition. So really enrich your experience as well with some of those advisory roles in which you can engage with the UN, not only in an employment contract, but also through contributing to this bigger cause. Now, reflecting a bit on also, especially if you would like to pursue more like a career within the UN, I also absolutely share what was being said in terms of identifying your main motivation. But I think there is a need as well for understanding, the UN. And I think, Rita, you're the one who said development. Indeed, so there's development, there's peace, there's humanitarian. Identify to which cluster do you want, understand the work of the different agencies, and then look into what kind of a role do you want to play. Because, for example, yes, I am a woman in STEM and I do work in this field. However, to be a leader in my space, I have to sharpen a lot my other skills, because it's not only about understanding the technology, but it's also about negotiation skills, because a lot of the work we do is also about bringing ambition, so countries to create certain commitments, for example, on climate change or others. It also relates to leading a team, and so complementing already your scientific background with learning, because for me, learning is always a journey. We need to always keep on learning and evolving and building those skills that you need to really evolve in your career. And, I think essentially the biggest problem we have is also that we don't have enough women in STEM. And this is something that is starting at a very young age already. And so my plea to all women that are in STEM or not in STEM is just to encourage more young women to really get into this field. And so when we have more coming into the workforce, I think we need to also be aware and cognizant of some of the challenges that the women will have. I mean, as I already mentioned, I started at a very young age my career in the UN, and so being a young woman engineer in a field which was already also very much male dominated, of course, this is something that you have to build resilience. You have to also have the confidence to speak. And you have the patience as well, sometimes to just to look at the bigger picture and see where is it that you want to drive and how you can drive towards your second objective. So having a plan for where you need to be, by when you need to be, I think is always helpful for sure. The other challenge is also irrespective. I mean, for sure, for as a young woman, you have a double bias, the age and also the gender. But then throughout, as I mentioned, also I started with surveying industries, and also later as I worked on different conventions, traveling to countries where I visited also many industries is also been part of my journey. And so every time, again, mostly seeing that at the table there's only men, and many times I was the only woman. So how do we bring awareness on that this is not the norm? This is also part of our role as women leaders, to just say, to point it out a bit, very much like what Hiroko-san has mentioned, is just like, this is really not normal, and this is not how we should be in the present age and time. And I think slowly, things do change, and you can make that also more visible. The other element is empowering women around you, and again, I think many women, as Hiroko-san said, may sit in the back. As a team leader, also my responsibility, I take it very much, is like really encouraging them to be in the front, encouraging them to present, encouraging them to talk, encouraging them to say their opinions, to apply also, because we need to take more risks, and to grow in the current constellation, we do need to take more risks. And so having that encouragement and also helping them in building a network, because a network of the supporters around you, and this can be it doesn't need to be only women as well. Of course, we're talking about women leaders, but I need to say one challenge for me that started already at a very early pace in my career is that I travel a lot, and having a family. So although I'm not based in a duty station which is severe, I do travel to a lot of these duty stations. Arriving at 2 a.m. Alone, in a country where there's a lot of security issues is a challenge. Knowing that I'm leaving my children as well to travel to these countries, and maybe on that night, one of them will have fever. So these are things that you do need a support system, and for sure the partner that you have that supports you to also make sure that he is there or she is there for the children is a very important element. And within the workplace as well, finding those partners, allies, whether these are colleagues at the same level, higher levels, but just basically allies that can also help in the advancement of the women empowerment within the organization and also abroad. I think one exciting part of my work is also more looking at how do we empower women on the ground through our projects, and that is the impact that we promote within UNIDO. So in all of our program, we do establish gender baselines for our work. So if we're delivering a training, if we're delivering infrastructure, we always have assessments that demonstrate what are the implications for women, what is the baseline, and what are our targets in terms of enhancing gender equality. And just to give you an example, we do promote innovation and the role of women in innovation and creating new startups that help deliver clean technologies in developing and emerging economies. And when we first started the program, we really did not see much appetite from women to apply for this program. And we thought about how to design the program in a better way, built a lot of connections with grassroots organizations that work on women organization, and started a category for women-led businesses. And this made a big difference of course, over time. So within 3 to 4 years, we really started to see almost the same level of applications coming from women-led businesses and men-led businesses. And in the meantime, we also have many inspiring stories about women that are leading the development of technologies on the ground and helping in introducing them in developing and emerging economies. So yeah, I think essentially, this is what I had to share for now, but happy to address other questions as we go about.
Thank you so much, Rana. That's, I'm sure, very inspiring for our audience. And if I can sort of go back to some of that advice that you shared, we could basically say that the winning formula is complementing your scientific skills with those other important interpersonal and negotiation skills that are really critical in roles in the UN. And then together, along with that, build patience, resilience, and have clear where you want to go. So craft your path, which may be different from others, and is unique, and take more risks to grow, which is important as well. Hopefully, finding supportive leaders like you, that will be possible for many. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Now we're moving on to our next and last part. I think we can spend at least a couple of minutes maybe with a couple of questions from the audience. Jack, over to you.
Thank you, Jorge. Colleagues, thank you for everyone who's been putting their comments in the chat. To field some of the questions to our speakers, maybe let's start with Rana. Very briefly, Rana, how does the UN promote women's leadership and address gender bias in hiring or in promoting women?
So all the UN, and I am sure Anita probably has a lot more to share on that. We do have something called the UN swap, where the UN has certain commitments in terms of how we are improving gender parity within the UN, whether in terms of having certain policies that would help in making the working environment better and more fit for women, because at the end we need better maternity leaves, we need better flexible arrangements. So it's a combination. It's not only about promotion. There's a part which is the environment. There's the part which is possibly also setting some goals and targets in terms of the number of women that we want to see within certain roles, and then starting with long lists and short lists that have more women in them, doing more outreach. And kudos to you, Jack, and all the team in UNIDO that does all this outreach, that we do see a lot more interest from women that is coming into the UNIDO pools. And so, there is an element as well of making sure that we do reach out more for women to know about these jobs.
Great. Thank you, Rana. And then for Anna, we have several comments on those who want to work in disaster risk reduction, post-disaster reconstruction, or resilience in general. So what do you think are the skill sets that are important for those who wish to join the UN in the humanitarian field, especially as a woman based in a challenging duty station?
That's a good question. In my personal experience, it was very helpful to be already in country affected by disaster. Is where the connection and your availability and you get to network better. We have been seeing an increased number of staff engaged in DRR, and also, of course, on the other end of climate change, that some very strong technical capability, and often are coming from experience from government or civil society. So technical capability in terms of building up a warning system, or train government official and civil society organization in the modality of preventing disaster and building resilience. It's a more and more call for this expertise, as many crises are compounded with natural disasters. So I think that there will be more call for that and more opportunity, of course, not only with the specialized agency doing DRR like UN DRR, but also across other organizations from UN Women and others working in the field.
Thank you, Anna. And maybe let's pick one last question. Adina, for those who want to work, for women who want to work in marginalized sectors and work with the UN, do you have any tips on how to begin?
Marginalized sectors. Let me see if I understand the question correctly. If how to work with women that are
Support women
marginalized.
in marginalized sectors, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that the UN as a whole works with gender equality, and I think that there are several issues that I can mention very briefly because I know we're out of time. I think one thing is it's always good to have field experience. It's always good to come into the UN with practical experience from the ground. And then be very open-minded because, as I mentioned, all UN agencies more or less work on these issues, and they try to bring women into all the programs that they're working on. So, because marginalized women have needs of various sorts, and I think that this is also what then allows people wanting to work with this target group to really target multiple UN organizations. I know that, I mean, just from the plethora of colleagues here, you can hear that all of them are working on gender issues and marginalized groups somehow. And maybe lastly, I think one thing that we haven't talked about so much, but it's language skills. I do think that it's an important skill to harness in addition to maybe have an experience in gender issues and discrimination and inclusion and so on. So get the thematic expertise, but also get some language skills and then ultimately get some field experience and then seek broadly. I think that really this is my best tip for anybody trying to look for a position in the UN. Apply, apply, apply. Put your best foot forward. Don't be afraid to show your skills. And really, the UN, I think, is so diverse, and we're also looking for that kind of expertise. So I think that, you know, if one door remains closed, try the other one. Don't give up. We need more women who have that willingness to contribute.
Thank you, Adina. I think that's a very good tip, especially for somebody working in recruitment. I think people just need to keep trying to apply because there may be just one vacancy now, but to get practice whenever you get the chance to be interviewed is already, you know, a big step. At this point, thank you, colleagues. I'll pass the floor to Jorge for some closing remarks.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. We're now coming to the end of this inspiring session. I would just like to thank our 5 incredible panelists, Rita, Anna, Adina, Rana, Hiroko-san. Thank you very much for sharing your powerful stories. Your experiences remind us that careers in the UN are not just jobs. They really are transformative personal journeys with great impact. So thank you for that. And then finally, a big thank you as well to our audience. Thank you for your engagement, your questions, and to UN volunteers, of course, for making this event possible. Please follow them if you're interested in more webinars like this about working in the UN. We're leaving the link for registrations there in comments. So to all, thank you so much and have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
And thanks to the moderators.